How to communicate with your guardian angel and receive help from them. Angels are high-frequency beings that do not have a form, but they can adapt to the appearance you wish to see. There can be several angels. The more you fulfill your mission on this earth, the more forces support you. Angels feel your pain, fatigue, and other emotions, but they cannot change anything because they follow the law of human free will. According to this law, they do not have the right to interfere in a person's life difficulties, but they can do so only in exceptional cases, if it is a matter of life and death. What should you do if help is still needed? A guardian angel can enter your field and help you only with your permission. You can say something like this. This is an example. My angel, I ask for your help and give consent for the situation to be resolved in a favorable way for me. Thank you, and I accept. To start, just try talking to him. It doesn't have to be in the form of a strict pattern. This communication is like with a close friend. At first, you may not feel him. That's normal. But he hears you. Your thoughts and words emit vibrations. The angel reads these vibrations. Therefore, when you start developing this contact over time, you may develop and open a channel of clear knowing, clear hearing, clear seeing, as it happened with me.
Listen, it's very neat. By the way, the girl herself has quite a pure energy.
Yes, for example.
Yes.
Well, look, we also filmed a big episode. There will be a cover and a link somewhere here about angels. We discussed a lot there, that the topic of angels, there's also a lot of fake stuff, a lot of, as you say, collective accounts, right? And this topic of communicating, calling upon your angel, yes, people without abilities, people without contact with their higher self, without extrasensory perception, without all of that, they start sending their requests somewhere, talking to someone, to, my angel, help me. Where is the guarantee that he watched some real, yes, and some entity didn't latch onto him, and this entity, upon hearing that he needs some help, will conditionally start throwing its ideas at him. How to heal from this?
It depends on the guide. Who is conveying this information? In her execution, I really like it because she has it, well, very clean. The flow is really good, clean, and it's clear that the person is well knowledgeable in the right topic, in the right direction. How does she present it? I mean, you see, she always says that you shouldn't take it as a strict rule, that you can go this way or you can go that way, right? In your own words, you just address your guardian angel. A guardian angel is an egregore, but a bright one. If it is
An egregore.
an egregore, yes,
So it's not a being?
we will get to that. The very idea of a guardian angel is that every person has a guardian angel.
She even says several.
Several, yes. When it is presented purely, meaning she doesn't add anything extra of her own, any of those peculiarities, she presents it purely. When it is presented like this, after her words, I ask myself, what is a guardian angel in the sense that I heard from her? Is it something bright, kind, harmonious? I might start having, those Christmas cards, drawings. Well, this is a pure presentation. Regardless of whether a person has extrasensory perception or not, they feel it. It's an egregore. But through this egregore, you can indeed transmit certain, so to speak, bright impulses from luminous beings that are higher up.
Well, let's figure it out anyway.
Let's figure it.
Egregore.
Go ahead.
We already know what it is. We also recorded separate episodes about it. She claims that these are some kind of beings, that everyone has a guardian angel, or even several, like 2, 3, and so on.
Yes, she just calls them by these words. She calls them as if they are guardian angels. I would, for example, say that it's your spiritual family or your spiritual mentors.
And is that also an egregore?
No, a spiritual family, spiritual mentors, that's not an egregore. But she uses the word angel in our world. Here, an angel is always an egregore, almost, always. I mean, very few people have seen real living angels. Moreover, as we discussed in this segment, the original angels are actually these huge beings, seraphim with wings, destroyers, and they have nothing to do with this light and good. The light and good is purely an egregorial layer. The best thing she does is that she really doesn't bring anything bad. She precisely transmits, again, this is my perception, how I feel her words, the very egregore of pure angelism. By the way, there's also this angelic therapy, angelic tarot cards.
Yes, yes.
And so on and so forth. It's approximately to that extent. These are pure egregorial concepts to some extent, but real entities stand behind them. Real entities that you, through this egregore, like through a buffer, call upon, like through a certain image, to someone who vibrates at the same frequency as this egregore. That's why I keep saying today, yes, that it's very good that she doesn't add anything of her own. It's truly pure energy.
But the energy of the egregore.
Yes, but
Let's pause for a minute. The egregore, as we have long established in our general field, is always some kind of, not even an exchange, but rather a certain siphoning of energy. The egregore gives you something, but it definitely takes something away.
listen, look, there's the egregore of Apple. Apple has a very strong egregore as it's one of the most powerful companies in the world, and accordingly, it has one of the most powerful egregorial components. In this regard, Apple is there. Does it absorb energy? I know right now, there's definitely a real, like, I'm using my iPhone and I feel like it's draining my energy. So I took, I don't know, scraped off that Apple from the back cover, and I felt better. But that's already a bit on the level of schizophrenia.
I don't think it can be in such a way that your phone is draining your energy. But maybe it's about, you get into this egregore, right, of this Apple, and just, well, after a couple of months of using it, you already have a pair of headphones from the same brand, cases, something else.
You want to continue.
And you have to, because usually nothing else suits you. So a person gets fully equipped with a computer, a laptop, everything they need.
Depending on the person's wealth.
Yes. So it's already about needs, right? That's it. The egregore has influence.
Egregore, yes.
A person constantly walks around. Yes, it's all visible. What? They spread.
I agree, yes. The guys who work with angelic tarot cards, angelic therapy, and so on, they emit this slightly angelic egregore energy. That's an egregore. It really kind of draws you in, and it calls for using only this resource or something similar to this resource. And there the exchange is more at the level of time. That is, you give your time, your attention to this egregore, spreading information about this egregore. Yes, there are many egregores of this kind. That is, it doesn't necessarily have to be something really creepy that drains your energy. Many egregores, especially the so-called light, pure ones, are just about spreading information about them. Using them, yes, kind of, giving time, and so on.
Let's give some examples of light, pure egregores. Well, for example,
the egregore of angels.
So you think there's no draining, nothing, no entities?
If these topics are presented purely like with her, yes, there's no draining, no. Something like crystal therapy as an option, some kind of healing. And the idea, even, you know what?
Let's talk about healing. That's interesting. This healing, for example, I looked into this topic.
Theta healing. Or Reiki.
Reiki, yes.
If it's presented purely, and today, for example, the egregore of Reiki has deteriorated a lot. So many say that they actually feel really bad after it.
People's lives there are almost worse than after ayahuasca.
Almost worse than they were, yes. And therefore, again, it's necessary to have pure conduits, both in the energy of Reiki and in the energy, for example, of the same theta healing.
So you think it purely depends on the conduit?
Yes. Because again, look, if Reiki was fine before that, that part of the egregore remains, it hasn't died, it remains, it's just at a higher vibration. And accordingly, as they say, a little bit of the pie has grown down to it. Well, those masters who were not as advanced as the master who initially launched this egregore, exactly, you can easily reach this top, the egregore's peak. And if you truly are a conduit, you can do it. Then yes. Well, the simplest thing, for example, if I were to teach Reiki, I believe, perhaps a bit immodestly, that I would reach quite a significant height, or in theta healing, I also believe that I would be a very good conduit.
And that after your sessions, hypothetically, people wouldn't feel worse.
Yes, they wouldn't feel worse. But it's a certain egregore. Now, regarding angels, right? Look, angels are an egregore, as I mentioned before, yes. But above them, there are still certain beings that carry out all of this. If you address and say, my angel, there will still be a bit of this egregorial buffer. I would like to say that it won't be there, but it will still be there because, well, at least that's how I see it. Perhaps I am mistaken. But Generally, in such matters, I am not mistaken. Through this buffer, you sort of pass upwards and beyond. Yes, it will respond to you there. Well, in rare cases, some egregorial space will respond directly, like a computer, a program. But still, most often, when a person calls upon certain luminous entities, and what is an angel? It is essentially an egregore of luminous entities. You sort of call upon them, and they truly come to you. They come directly from above. Beings.
Which ones?
Most often from what I've seen when you address and call upon them. And even if I've had certain periods in my life when I reached out, I could directly feel who comes from there. Either your spiritual mentors, or what is called guides in esotericism, or your spiritual family. But in general, it's like some kind of spiritual support for you. The souls that are assigned to you, they really, she described it absolutely correctly. There are several of them, and throughout your life, if you fulfill, as they say, your mission to the fullest, they start to help you more strongly because they see that you are not deviating from your path, and so on. Throughout life, they sometimes manifest more strongly, sometimes less so. I had 2 direct contacts with them.
Explain specifically with whom. How would you call them?
I would call them spiritual helpers. Yes, spiritual helpers. Notice, there's no egregore here. It's just a spiritual helper. It's like a certain soul that helps you in your mission during your incarnation here.
So it's unembodied.
Unembodied.
But also a consciousness that could potentially be a human.
Highly potential. It can be a human, or it might not be. For example, if it's one of your direct teachers, then in those afterlife worlds, it might not be your, I don't know, relative incarnated here who can come here. Well, yes, who can come here.
I mean, is it more likely a human or some kind of Pleiadian?
50-50. Again, it depends on the level. If it's directly someone from your spiritual family, and I've had such people with whom I've made some contact, yes, then it's usually more of a disembodied human. But if it's some spiritual curators, mentors, or something else, then it could be anyone. And the same Pleiadians or some other guys, or just very high, bright souls that are assigned to you. You see, I really like the topic of angels, but I don't quite like this egregorial flair because it seems like it's some kind of being that's just always with you, like a sort of...
Will solve all your problems.
Will solve all your problems. Some kind of tail that follows you, assigned by some divine hierarchs. That's it. But I've never seen anything like that. Anyone on a mission who comes here, and we are all here, well, on some mission, whether more strict or less strict, or rather more defined or less defined, has helpers. That is, those disembodied souls with whom he has a connection. There. In those worlds, yes. These include essentially kindred spirits and various different guys. For example, some of your own teachers. Everyone has them, absolutely everyone, regardless of their level of spiritual development. Every person has a certain number of curators, teachers, helpers, advisors, and so on. Those who are close in spirit, who are truly more experienced, yes, who can somehow help and guide you on what to do here in this world. That's it. And we can, of course, call them angels if we, as I mentioned before, don't add any kind of animations or fantasies of the mind to it. Then, indeed, through this angelic, egregorial layer, well, in other words, through the angelic metaphor, this would be the most correct. Through this angelic metaphor, we truly touch upon whom I am speaking about. In this regard, the most important thing from such an angelic guide, using the angelic metaphor, is not to add anything personal. That's exactly why I mentioned this girl.
Well, just to explain it to a person, somehow, right?
Somehow, yes, somehow. Exactly. But actual angels, with wings and so on, I haven't seen that. I have seen high disembodied souls many times and communicated with them. I wanted to, yes, share 2 times.
Yes, what was in your experience? What you did with them?
2 of my experiences, yes, that I had. I came down with pneumonia. It was my first year at university. I realized that I was in some sort of crisis. I was 16, almost 17. And at this juncture, between 16 and 17, I remember lying at home with a high fever. And I realized that I was heading in the completely wrong direction. And I really had a crisis somewhere around the ages of 13, 14, 15, and 16. Those 3 to 4 years were truly a crisis for me.
That's called adolescence.
That's called adolescence, yes. Because during that adolescence, I somewhat lost touch with my higher self. I had it until I was 12 or 13. It was strong. Then, well, certain things happened in the family. I didn't really secure myself in it, but in that very connection, and drifted away for 3 to 4 years. At that time, I couldn't understand what was happening to me. And just in my first year, as I already mentioned, I was lying down sick. And at some point, with a fever probably over 40, I had a direct request, a very strong internal request. I understood that it couldn't go on like this. There needed to be some way out. I had a column of light, just like that, huge, like bam. It was a visual column of light. What did it essentially do to me? It just took and sharply pulled me upwards. Energetically, it just really yanked me up with all its might. I remember I suddenly recalled who I was, where I was. I remembered who I was at 12 years old, who I was at 11, at 10 years old. I saw everything. At that moment, I truly saw my mission here on this planet. It happened one evening during a particularly intense fever. And by the way, there are quite a few stories like this through fever because the mind weakens. It doesn't hold back as much, and you start to connect with your higher self or various angelic stories. In my case, I had a direct request for that connection. By the feeling, it wasn't the handwriting of the higher self, because the higher self, as I later developed this technique, I can say, is a very high energy, your own, but it has your own handwriting. It was a very high, pure handwriting, but not mine. It felt as if it was sent by someone, a very familiar soul to me. Very high, pure, bright, but not the higher self. Well, as I called it, yes, a spiritual helper. And after that, I threw away all my black clothes and dressed in all white. I also had hair. That was about this long. My hair was the longest, reaching down to here, to the waist. I cut it very short and dressed all in white and went to the university. I remember the guys were just staring with eyes wide open. They asked me, "What? What were you sick with? Were you sick in the head by any chance?"
But you've already gotten further.
I went further. Yes. Then I wrote my first book. Then I wrote a second book. And after that, I started doing a whole bunch of different things. Later on, I began to engage in spiritual practices more consciously. And somewhere, right after graduating from Moscow State University, after the 6th year, I launched my School of the Higher Self. That was 12 years ago. The launch of the school specifically, but what I was talking about, well, that was already many years ago.
And was there a second contact?
The second contact was before that, before this incident, right around the age of 13 or 14, when I just started getting into this gothic, so to speak, subculture. I had very depressive thoughts. It seemed to me that I didn't understand who I was, where I was at all. I didn't understand why I was living in this world at all, even to that extent, right? And in one of those extremely depressive moments when I didn't understand at all why I was living on this planet, a pillar of light fell on me from above, just like that. And at that moment, from those depressive, suicidal thoughts, I just whooshed upwards, and they never visited me again, but a certain aura still remained, which was later, as they say, cleansed by a second pillar a couple of years later. Those are two such stories. And each time I had this feeling that there was a certain message in that energy. Both times, the message was something like, stop messing around. That's in more like, well, simplified words. But the essence was exactly this, that yes, you're just wasting time. You need to do other things. Because for me, this life is precisely mission-driven. We've already talked about this. There is a life that's like a direct mission and a mission that's more like, well, you can do it if you want or not. For me, it's just, as they say, clearly defined, scheduled by years. What I do at this time, what I do at this time, what I do at this time. And even now, when I clearly saw this mission, when I see that I'm deviating from my goals, I understand that I'm wasting time and need to get back on track. And these two contacts probably demonstrated to me for the first time this clear feeling of wasting time.
What would you recommend to those who want, firstly, to discover their mission, and secondly, possibly to make contact with their guides without an egregore?
The direct path of the higher self, the direct path of transcendental meditation, the disidentification of the higher self, this is exactly what I've been doing for the last 12 years. And 25 years, minus these 3-4 years when I was out, well, essentially 20 years, yes, and 12 years in the school. That's it. Therefore, we have the most direct method without any egregores at all. Moreover, when someone comes to the school, after some other schools, I say, guys, yes, with all in general, those initiations and other stories. What do? Exactly, we disassociate from all of them completely. There, cosmology, Reiki, theta healing, channeling, yes, it's all great. It's your sensitivity. Everything is fine. But here you need to let it all go completely and totally disassociate. And accordingly, yes, go purely. That's it. More detailed and thorough information, including on this path, you can find in the texts. By the way, I have released a series called Essence. I highly recommend it for everyone to get acquainted with. This was my deepest experiment. You can already read it through the links in the blog. There are 4 chapters. They also very well describe a number of things. I am involved in, that's it, and come to the school, to the preferential group. It will be in July. I will be waiting for everyone.
Dear friends, I invite you all to my course with a personal vision, Return to the True Self. This course has been around for over 12 years. And recently we launched it in English with my complete personal vision in 6 modules, working with blocks, working with egregores, working with the ego, contacting the higher self. Answers to simple questions, answers to more complex questions, and then there's what we call the Great Journey. It's contact with space, contact with the planet, contact with God, contact with anything at your request through the higher self. Health, finances, relationships, purpose, past life. The course is available at any time. You can sign up for it using the link below this video. Come on over. I'll be waiting for you.